There's no denying that the Detroit Lions' first priority in the offseason is the defensive side of the ball, particularly, in my opinion, the defensive line. You addressed the secondary last year, had some injuries, but you didn't address the defensive line outside of a third-round trade-up project pick in Broderick Martin. So you have to address first order of business. Then you can go to the secondary. But there is a matter of wide receiver. The Detroit Lions have one extra pick this year. We don't have a fourth-round pick, but we have an extra third-round pick via the T.J. Hockenson trade 2 seasons ago. So with that being said, we have 2 wide receivers that were on our team last year that are not under contract heading into the 2024 NFL season. One is Donovan Peoples-Jones and the other is Josh Reynolds. Now, I put a poll out that surprisingly got a whole bunch of votes. Which one? You had to pick one, Josh Reynolds or DPJ. And overwhelmingly, it was Josh Reynolds that the poll voters voted for out of 4,500 votes. Well, it is possible that neither one of those guys could come back. Now, we just signed a wide receiver to essentially a practice squad position in the futures reserve contract. But the question that I have for you is, have you thought outside the box? Have you thought about a receiver outside of the Lions that we could re-sign? Now, we have 4 wide receivers heading into this season under contract, okay? We went into the 2023 NFL season with 5 wide receivers on the active roster, the 5th one being Josh Reynolds. Now, if the Detroit Lions, let's say they bring back one of the guys, we traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones, and essentially a 6th-round loaner, and we could bring back Josh Reynolds. So let's say, okay, we have 5, but let's say we want to carry 6, or we want like a true potential game changer on our team along with Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Antoine Green, right? Who could we bring in? Now, I was told of a sleeper free agent person that you already know who it is because he's on the thumbnail. A sleeper guy that the Detroit Lions could possibly entertain bringing in free agency. And I love me some Josh Reynolds. I think that it would be awesome to bring him back. As far as Donovan Peoples-Jones, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of him in Detroit. But there's a guy that is available in free agency. He won't be tagged because there's another guy named Josh Allen who will probably have the franchise tag. So if they don't work out a contract with Josh Allen and they tag him, then this guy probably won't be tagged. But if Josh Allen can get a deal done, this guy could be tagged. But I'm reading reports that the Jacksonville Jaguars could be frustrated with this guy. Who else? Who is he? He's on the thumbnail. Calvin Ridley. Now, before you go any further, I know what you're going to say because I said the same thing. Well, what about the gambling suspension? We cut Quintez Cephas for gambling on an NFL game. He was cut. Jameson Williams was suspended for gambling on a non-NFL game. And he was just suspended, but we kept him. So Calvin Ridley is kind of I don't know what the Detroit Lions would do. The gambling wasn't done on our team, but that is in his past. But the Detroit Lions had a guy that was gambling, but on a non-NFL game. So you cut Quintez Cephas, who essentially was doing the same thing. But maybe the Detroit Lions believe in second chances. And Calvin Ridley could be a sleeper guy in free agency that could come to the Detroit Lions. Now I'm going to keep it a buck. If Calvin Ridley came here, our wide receivers core would be frightening. It really would be scary. We had J-Mo, Calvin Ridley, St. Brown, Antoine Green. We would have a squad, right? When it comes to wide receivers. Now, Calvin Ridley, late first round pick in 2018, 29 years old. He doesn't turn 30 until almost the season is over. We'll be in like week 15 when he turns 30. In 2023, he had 76 receptions, 1,016 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he averaged over 13 per catch. That's very similar to Josh Reynolds. Now, I can tell you that Josh Reynolds is going to cost significantly less than Calvin Ridley. Just without being even second guessing, we already know that. But one thing Josh does not have that Calvin does have is the speed. That would be another. And I love Josh Reynolds, but as far as a deep threat, we don't have more than one. And I know what you guys say. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But imagine one thing about you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. You had Jamal Agnew, who a former Detroit Lion. He was kind of a deep threat. You had Christian Kirk, a deep threat. You had Calvin Ridley, a deep threat. Why just limit ourselves with one? Imagine if we had a guy like Calvin Ridley playing the 49ers. That's another deep threat that you have to compensate for if you're the defense. Okay. So here is what, if you guys remember, he was traded a couple years ago from the Atlanta Falcons to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He signed a 4-year deal in Atlanta worth $10 million, a signing bonus of $8 million, $8.5 guaranteed, and an annual salary of $2.7 million. Now, before I show you what his spot track market value is, let's look and see what he did since he signed that deal. Man, he had a 1,000-yard season before last season. His last year in Jacksonville, I can't remember if he got hurt, but last year he was no slouch last year, right? So his market value, let me cut to me first. What is his market value? According to Spot Track, his market value is $17 million. 4 years, $68 million, $17 million. That's his market value. That will put him up there with Terry McLaurin, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, Brandon Cooks. Now, we have a priority. His name is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And according to Spot Track, they're talking about this guy could get $26 million a year. Now, I don't know if Brad is going to push out that much money. I don't know if that's what St. Brown and his agent are looking for. Anything he gets is going to be light years more than what he's making now. So I'm not sure he'll go 26 or even 21. He might go 15 to $18 million for St. Brown. Would the Detroit Lions be willing to spend another 17 on a guy like Calvin Ridley? But again, these are projected market values. That doesn't mean that it's going to be anywhere close to this. I will say this. The defensive tackles, a lot of these projections for Quinnen Williams, Jeffrey Simmons, Daron Payne, Ed Oliver, a lot of those guys were right within that estimated market value. So the question that I have for you is, got to pay St. Brown. There's no doubt about it. We got to take care of Jared Goff. I understand that. We have to take care of our in-house players. Okay. And we got 20 or so free agents, including Josh Reynolds and Donovan Peoples-Jones, that we may want to re-sign. And that will happen before we sign a guy like Calvin Ridley. But if we don't bring either Josh Reynolds or DPJ back, Calvin Ridley, would you entertain Calvin Ridley coming to the Detroit Lions? And if so, what would you be willing to pay him? Give me deal and length. So monetary compensation and length. Let me see. Brad Holmes has not given out a 4-year deal yet. Calvin Ridley will be 30 during this season. I'm going to say 3 years. Calvin Ridley, a 3-year. If he gets 17, that puts him at $51 million. $51 million. I'm going to say I could see Brad Holmes doing something 3 years. If we gave Cam Sutton 11, we'll give Calvin Ridley $15 million. So I'm going to say a 3-year deal, $15 million a year, and maybe $30 million guaranteed. Somewhere around there. $25 to $30 million guaranteed. I would take this. Mike Evans is going to be off the table. He's off the table. You can, Josh Reynolds and Calvin Ridley are essentially the same age. So I want you to, and I want you to remember something that Dan Campbell said. He said this in his season-ending press conference. You got to take your heart out of it. We love Josh Reynolds. I was a big advocate for him when he was cut, when he was asking to be released by the Titans. We know the chemistry. 3 years now with Jared Goff. Half of 2021, all of 2022 and 2023. But if we take our heart out of the situation, Josh Reynolds is going to be cheaper, but he is not a deep threat. He's not. He's a 25 to 30. He catch everything he catches is a first down, or a touchdown, but he's not a deep threat. We need another deep threat on our roster. So I wouldn't be opposed to this. If I had to pick between the two, I probably would take Calvin Ridley. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I love Josh Reynolds. I really truly do. But you have to look at it from the long game. And I think that Josh Reynolds is you've got St. Brown, because you got to remember too, Laporta is coming up. So you're talking about security blankets. You got St. Brown. You got Sam Laporta. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going to be catching out the backfield. You've got Jamison Williams, who's going to get more looks, right? Where's Josh Reynolds going to fit in? And you're not worried about Josh beating you deep. You're just not. Calvin Ridley would essentially be that DJ Chark type of guy. So I'm going to say 3-year deal, $45 million. But then that leaves the defensive line, and we talked about that already, that it's going to be, I'm really leaning toward the fact that the Detroit Lions are going to bring in a kind of mid to upper tier, like upper echelon, just barely above the upper cusp. Somebody like I'm telling you, Van Ginkel and Epinesa, something like that, 2 for 1, and then we'll get somebody. But we also need a secondary player, but we have the draft as well. And whatever we don't do in free agency, we'll clean up in the draft. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Calvin Ridley for 3 years, $45 million, Josh Reynolds. I'm taking Calvin. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions.